Welcome to Quick Movies. The film begins in 1984, when Flight JL-50 is taking off from Kolkata. Nonetheless, part of the way through the flight, they begin encountering weighty disturbance and awful climate. Unexpectedly, the correspondences are removed and the plane is lost suddenly. From that day on, not a solitary piece of information is found with respect to the vanishing. The film then, at that point, slices to 35 years after the fact in the year 2019. We are shown a distant town in West Bengal named Oliver where a lot of children are playing football. Out of nowhere an enormous plane flies over them, which is exceptionally uncommon in a bumpy region like theirs. The gathering promptly surges toward the plane and figures out that it has collided with the close-by slopes. The scene then, at that point, movements to Kolkata city, where the hero Shantanu is watching a news report on television. The report makes reference to that a business plane Flight 826, which had a few high-profile individuals ready, has disappeared. It is thought that the plane has been seized. Some time later, Shantanu heads to his work environment, the focal agency of examination. It just so happens, he is a high-positioning official there. He then goes to the accident site with his associate Garincha and begins his examination. From the outset, he moves toward a salvage trooper and inquires about their advancement. The warrior uncovers that everything except 2 individuals kicked the bucket in the accident and the survivors are getting clinical consideration. One of the survivors is the pilot and the other one is a traveler. Oddly, a traveler's carcass is found in the cockpit demonstrating that the plane was commandeered before it crashed. After the discussion, the 3 plan to board a helicopter to visit the accident site. In any case, all at once, the officer remembers something vital. He tells the CBI officials that the crashed plane isn't the one they're searching for. In basic words, it isn't Flight A026. It is, truth be told, Flight Prison 50 that vanished a long time back. The film then glimmers to the past to the year 1984, and we are acquainted with a hopeful pilot from Kolkata, BEA, who she has all that one could want: a lucrative work, a caring family and a brilliant future. In any case, for reasons unknown, she is vexed from the beyond couple of months. Her mom advises her to light up and fail to remember the past, yet B who essentially overlooks her and leaves back in the present. B who is battling for her life in the clinic. She is, in all honesty, the pilot of the crashed Flight JL-50, which disappeared in 1984. In the interim, Shantanu and Gonga travel to another far-off town and visit a school. There they call the physical science teacher, Dr. Subrata Das, and begin investigating him. Shantanu uncovers that the crashed plane G-50 had withdrawn for its objective in 1984 and vanished suddenly. He additionally lets the elderly person know that one of the seats in the flight was empty and the ticket had a place with, as a matter of fact, Das himself. Briefly, Das is noticeably paralyzed as this is some last objective poop, yet he guarantees that he doesn't recall about the past as he has aged significantly now. Dr. Das then heads home and starts looking for something. A couple of seconds after the fact, he gathers a lot of reports, a few pictures and consumes them generally together. This infers that he knows something about the plane accident. Afterward, a news report uncovers that a fear-based oppressor association named the ABBA has guaranteed liability regarding Flight A26 commandeering and is requesting the arrival of their chief Partha Majumdar in return for the traveler's security. Potso is planned to be executed in a couple of days. It is likewise detailed that the authorities will give up to their requests a couple of days after the fact. Pilot B, who recaptures cognizance and Shantanu goes to grill her. As a matter of some importance. He asks her how the plane crashed and B who starts describing everything. She uncovers that like some other day, the flight took off at 3 p.m. For the initial 10 minutes, all was great, however out of nowhere a traveler burst into the cockpit and wounded the co-pilot to death. The in-flight dinner's probably been horrible. He then, at that point, gave BU a few organizers and undermined her to change the plane's course. However, before she could consent, the weather conditions decayed out of nowhere. This made the plane go through an extraordinary meeting of choppiness and soon it crashed. After the story, SA requests BU the area and date from the flight's departure, and the last option answers Kolkata, 1984. True to form, Shantanu doesn't trust her words and calls her a liar. He then, at that point, makes reference to that they are in 2019 and hearing this. BU is shocked to figure out more about her. The CBI officials arrive at B's old house and investigate a portion of the neighbors close by. Since the episode happened a long time back, relatively few individuals know her, however luckily their nearby go over a couple-to-be, whose family. The spouse uncovers that B who was a talented pilot. However, her vocation began going downhill. At the point when she got into a relationship with a man, he made her pregnant before marriage and died bafflingly. Be that as it may, B whose limit came when her kid was conceived dead. Before long, the spouse takes out a photograph collection and shows an image of B, who just before she was killed in 1984. An amazing miracle, she very closely resembles the B who in the emergency clinic. In spite of the proof, Santonio, who doesn't have faith in time travel, actually feels that everything is manufactured. Later he goes to the CBI base and pays attention to the black box recording of Prison 50 as B who had referenced already. A few ruffians entered the cockpit and killed the co-pilot. Then, at that point, inevitably, everything went quiet. Santonio asks his specialist, the last day, the black box recorded anything, and the last option makes reference to August 23, 1984. This shocks everybody, as a black box is for all intents and purposes indestructible. Thus, they unyieldingly want to accept that the plane has some way or another made a trip through opportunity to the year 2019. In the interim, the second survivor from the Prison 50 flight crash, Mitra, has recovered awareness. At the point when a medical caretaker illuminates him that the accident has another survivor. Mitra promptly heads to B, whose space to polish her off. Fortunately, a medical caretaker sees him and calls for help. Notwithstanding, rather than giving up the neurotic, Mitra holds the medical caretaker at knife point and arises in the emergency clinic's lobby. Santonio likewise shows up simultaneously and attempts to quiet Mitra down, however the last option doesn't tune in. All things considered, he gradually moves toward the principal entryway. Furthermore, when everybody is expecting in any event, he get away. Santoni pursues the neurotic, yet when he comes to first floor, Mitra has proactively gotten away from in a vehicle. Dubious. Santoni then, at that point, conducts research on him. He figures out that Mitra was a virtuoso who was a teacher at the Kolkata Science Exploration Center. He was likewise a left-wing extremist who was engaged with some fear-based oppressor associations a long time back. In the wake of finding Meta's location, Santini arrives at his home. There he finds a colossal assortment of books, documents and other exploration papers that Mitra had written in the course of his life. So Antonio opens one of the documents and goes over an exploration paper named Undertaking A when he flips over certain pages. He additionally finds the outline of the Prison 50 flight, understanding that it is connected with the plane accident. He chooses to take the document with him later. To figure out more about Mitra and his undertaking, Santoni goes to the Kolkata Science Exploration Center and converses with a teacher named Ashwini. When Ashwini catches wind of the undertaking, he begins giving a set of experiences illustration. He specifies that in 253 BC, the sovereign of India assembled researchers, and thinkers from all over the country to deliver 9 unique books which showed about a few otherworldly expressions like imperceptibility, the capacity to fly and time travel. These books were then covered into the ground, expecting that the adversaries could involve it for their own utilization. A few centuries after the fact, a few pages of the time travel book were found and a group of scientists was assembled to demonstrate the hypothesis. This highly confidential exploration program was marked Venture A, however no end at any point came from it. In the wake of hearing this story, Shantanu inquires about Mitra, yet Ashwini makes reference to that he has close to zero familiarity with him. All things being equal, he recommends Shantanu meet Dr. Das. It were exceptionally close in those days to guarantee that the two. That evening, a rankled child bursts into Das's home and faces him for lying prior. He then draws out the venture papers and advises Das to uncover everything. Left with no decision, the elderly person begins talking. He says that Mitra, his dad, was a piece of venture day. In any case, when they couldn't find any end, the public authority reassessed it. Years after the fact, Mitra proceeded with his dad's exploration, and subsequent to working constantly, he at last tracked down the code. By and by, Santoni doesn't put stock in the story and calls it BS, however Das lets him know that everything is valid. He go on by saying that Mitra, utilizing his virtuoso psyche, explored the fragmented task papers and found the recipe with the assistance of which he found a few wormholes in the world's environment. Through these wormholes, time travel is conceivable. Das further notices that he was Meta's supporter at that point, so he knew the whole arrangement. Mitra needed to commandeer a plane, fly it through the wormhole and arrive at another course of events. For this, he shaped a coalition with Partha Majumdar, who made plane goodness 26 be commandeered in right now. Finally, the house closes by saying that he didn't get onto the flight since he became terrified. He detected that the analysis would turn out badly, thus it did. Metro had expected to return back with the trip in 35 hours, yet his computations ended up being incorrectly, and the plane evaporated for a long time. Misunderstanding maths and that way has neither rhyme nor reason. Shockingly, even after this clarification, Santoni will not trust a word. Yet, Das advises him that the authorities have at long last consented to let the fear-monger pioneer Patan out of guardianship in 2 days. On the off chance that he and Mitra rejoin, they can utilize their insight and ability to make some serious harm the country. However, I don't have any idea. Mitra appears to be a simpleton. This time, Santonio has all the earmarks of being concerned. So Das lets him know that there is a method for halting Mitra. He suggests that they enter the wormhole and travel once again into the past to 1984, where they can prevent Prison 50 from being seized. In the event that they succeed, there will be no passings and hoodlums like Partha and associations like ABBA won't ever exist. Albeit still reluctant, Santonio concurs. In the accompanying scene, the team heads to meet BEA, who at the emergency clinic, as she is the one in particular who knows the directions to the wormhole. Santoni demands her for the data. Yet, BEA, whose identity is, still stunned that she has voyaged 35 years into the future, doesn't have any desire to go along with such ease. After a great deal of persuading, she concurs, yet provided that she is allowed to fly the plane. Santonio plainly doesn't have any desire to yield to her requests, however, since this is a highly confidential mission and since she is the main pilot. In any case, he must choose the option to concur. The following morning Ronga orchestrates a plane furtively and the triplet sets off on their main goal. So Anthony actually believes that all that's a joke, yet as they are going to arrive at the alleged wormhole, all that starts shaking. Out of nowhere the plane glitches. What's more, BEA, who is compelled to make a crisis arrival in an open field. The region appears to be totally not the same as the one they recently chuckled. Before long a one-of-a-kind vehicle shows up and the three request a lift and get in. Sooner or later they arrive at Calcutta City and Santonio at last understands that they have really shown up in 1984. The roads, transports, inns and individuals. Everything looks like the 80s, despite the fact that Santonio is shocked by the unusual circumstance. He chooses to polish off what they came for, however at first he needs to grow a mustache. All in all, he needs to get something out into the open. Around evening time he heads to a shelter and here it is uncovered that Santonio is a vagrant who is dropped off at a similar halfway house in the year 1984. He hangs tight for some time and unexpectedly two men show up in a vehicle and drop the child inside. Santoni surges inside to check in the event that the child is him from an earlier time and from a memento. He checks his supposition. I suspended skepticism for the time travel thing, yet the happenstance of this timing is totally ludicrous. The following morning, he goes along with us. What's more, to be who and the three beginning talking about their following stage. Das, who is a nearby partner to Mitra previously, uncovers that the mystery meeting on the JL-50 commandeering will happen tonight in a stock room outside town. Afterward, the gathering arrives at the miserable spot and trusts that the culprits will show up. While inside the vehicle, Santonio inquisitively inquires as to whether she saw her stillborn kid with her own eyes. Be that as it may, the last option has no solution for this. B who essentially expresses that after the conveyance she became oblivious, and when she awakened the following day, her folks gave her the terrible news that her child was conceived dead. In the interim, Metro Paso and different hooligans show up at the distribution center and the gathering starts. Thus the three make an arrangement. Das and Santoni will defy the hooligans inside, while B who will be holding up in the vehicle. As per the arrangement, the two head inside and point their weapons at Mitra and his men. In any case, all of a sudden, the hooligans likewise strike back, starting a lethal shootout. Luckily, Santonio utilizes his prevalent battle abilities and brings down the hooligans individually. Eventually, he additionally brings down Pozzo, while Dr. Das kills his previous guide, Mitra. Presently, with the job well done, Santana gets the bag containing Project A papers and attempts to consume it. In any case, shockingly, DOS holds him at gunpoint and compromises for him to remain back. Here it is uncovered that everything was NASA's arrangement from the start. Since the first undertaking, papers were singed to cinders in the prison, 50 accident, the specific directions for the time travel wormholes were lost. Be that as it may, Das was not prepared to surrender with such ease. So when Santana moved toward him for cross-examination, a thought struck his brain. He chose to utilize the CBI official to turn back the clock and take the papers with the assistance of which he could acquire interminability. What DOS likewise uncovers that the day Mitra got away from the emergency clinic, he showed up at his home. Yet, rather than assisting Das with killing them, subsequently eliminating a significant snag from his way. With this disclosure, the two take shots at one another. However, Das falls off of it the most obviously awful, permitting Santana to dispose of the papers unequivocally. He then, at that point, continues to leave with B who. Yet, abruptly each of them three start encountering a horrifying, excruciating sound. It would seem since Mitra and his men were killed, the plane JL-50 never got commandeered and consequently the three never ventured out to the past. Presently the timetable is dismissing undesirable irregularities and thus the three are undeniably magically transported back to the present. Be that as it may, a little change in the previous outcomes in something else entirely substitute future. In the last scene, Santana is shown going in a gracious 26 with his better half, and their plane isn't seized. As a matter of fact, both Flight Goodness 26 and JL-50 were never seized as the bad guys were killed back in 1984. Shantanu and Rango even run into one another in the plane however don't perceive one another. This implies that the two never became companions in this substitute reality, and likely Shantanu didn't actually get to join the CBI as an official. Santoni then shows up at a similar shelter to commend his birthday as he is playing with the children and Alderby who approaches him and embraces him firmly. In a stunning new development, it is uncovered that Honeybee, whose child was not conceived dead all things considered. As a matter of fact, the kid was dropped to the shelter by his dad as it was brought into the world before B, who was hitched, and he expected that the general public wouldn't acknowledge her. The youngster is, as a matter of fact, Santana himself. Notwithstanding, in the new timetable, after the prison 50 flight returns securely, B, his mom in the end came clean with her, and that is the means by which the mother-child couple were brought together. Presently, in this timetable, the two have never been separated. The film closes as Antonio and his mom disperse presents to the stranded children and play with them, as both are sympathetic, blissful and appreciative for their new lives. Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.